All right, guys, we are live. This is the UFC 259 recap show on the Sherdog YouTube page, live on that. We're also on Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network, doing audio, all the places you can get the podcast, anywhere you can get a podcast. It's really late. It's about 1:45 a.m. I am your host. My name is Keith Schill, and joining me, as always, is the senior editor of Sherdog.com. He is, of course, Ben Duffy. Ben, how you doing, my man? You're on mute, Ben.
I'm doing great. Like you say, it is a little late, but considering we had 15 fights on the plate when we locked in about 9 hours ago,
Oof.
Could be a lot worse. I'm a little electrified. We learned a lot tonight, and I can't wait to dig in.
Yeah, would you say 9.5 hours, something like that? A lot of fights, 15 fights. This is actually one of the one cards where we had 15 fights on Wednesday when we did the breakdown, and actually all 15 fights actually happened. We had 3 title fights. Only one of the champions lost their belt. We'll get into that. But let's get right into it. We'll start right at the top of the card. Israel Adesanya was attempting to do something that only 4 other champions have done before him. There has been people who have tried to get 2 titles simultaneously and have fallen short. I know BJ Penn tried it. I'm sure somebody else has. But it happened again. Israel Adesanya fell short. This was a very close fight. I've seen scorecards all over the place. The judges' scorecards was really wacky. I don't have them right in front of me, but do you have that? By any chance, do you have the scorecards right in front of you?
Well, I know that 2 of the judges gave Blachowicz a 10-8 fifth round.
Yeah, I don't think
I don't know which 2 they were. Uh-huh. Like the judges were Cleary, Camijo, and the guy that does more than either of the other 2, and I can't remember his name right now. But yeah, 2 of those 3 gave Blachowicz a 10-8 fifth round.
So there's people watching this live on YouTube. I'm going to ask this question, then I'm going to throw it over to Ben. I saw a bunch of scorecards all over the place. Some people scored it for the champion Blachowicz. A lot of people scored it for Israel Adesanya. Tell me how you scored the card. Put it in the comment section, and me and Ben will get into ours. Scrolling through Twitter, it seemed pretty split. I would say maybe 60-40 in favor of Blachowicz winning. I am in the minority. I actually scored it for Israel Adesanya. I scored it 48-47 for Adesanya. I gave him the first 3 rounds. I believe they were all close, especially the second and third round. I gave Blachowicz the 4th and the 5th round. Before we actually discuss the action, you tell me how you scored the card. Or the fight, I should say.
I will throw out a bit of trivia or information while people are weighing in on that. I'm not saying this means everything. I'm not saying it means anything. But according to the UFC's official stats, Blachowicz outlanded Adesanya in all 5 rounds.
Okay. So how did you score it?
I scored it 48-47 Blachowicz, and I came really close to giving him the first round as well.
Okay.
I almost gave Blachowicz 4 rounds. And can I just kind of bust out and say why?
Okay.
Halfway through the second round, I would have bet money that Blachowicz was going to get robbed. Because he didn't look like he was winning, even though he was winning. And you talked about on the preview how much you love Adesanya's feints, especially his hip feint. Sure. And Blachowicz was biting so hard on those, especially early on. And it doesn't look cool when you're biting on feints. Like, you look like you're getting clowned on. But in between overreacting to Adesanya's feints, he was actually landing at least as much, and I thought was landing as hard. Adesanya's best weapon in the first 2 or 3 rounds were his inside leg kicks, I thought. And he landed some outside ones as well, but his low kicks were his I felt, most effective strikes. But Blachowicz was touching Adesanya with his jab and his straight pretty consistently. He was throwing the same body kicks that he used to murder Dominic Reyes. They didn't have quite the same effect, but he was landing them.
Sure.
But yeah, it looked like Blachowicz was losing the fight to me just on optics, even though he was actually landing effective offense. That was my thought.
Yeah, so I have no issues with anybody who scored any round for Blachowicz. I thought the first 2 rounds were close. I just slightly gave it to Adesanya, but I could easily be convinced that Blachowicz won. What I will say is Blachowicz gave Adesanya the fight he needed to win, especially in those 3 rounds. Like, Adesanya needed an outside kickboxing match, and that's pretty much what he got. Some things that I thought Adesanya did very well was to judge distance. He was able to really avoid the big shots when Blachowicz threw it. He was, I said in the breakdown, I thought he was the master of distance, and he was doing so well to just dodge the punches that were coming at him, just get out of the way. So I think that was good. But I think Adesanya was feinting too much and not actually throwing offense. Like, I felt in the beginning, especially when it was a kickboxing match, like I said, I still gave him those rounds. I just felt like he could have made the gap wider by throwing, because when he was throwing, he was being effective. Especially his like overhand right. He kept going over the top on the attacks, and he was landing it. And he also was like a lot of like one shots, wasn't throwing combinations. And I felt like, I felt there was moments where he really could have put it on Blachowicz and really kind of, hurt him. But unfortunately, for my pick, that didn't happen. Do you agree with me or disagree with me?
I agree with you. I think I was surprised, and obviously the UFC booth was surprised as well, that Blachowicz took so long to really start trying in earnest to take Adesanya down. Maybe that was his plan all along, or maybe he really wanted to test himself on the feet against someone in Adesanya that both you and I think is, arguably the greatest striker in MMA history, or at least on the short list. Maybe he just wanted to see if he could hang with him. But yeah, even though I gave Blachowicz the second round and could have given him the first round, I was still surprised that this was the game plan he was pursuing. I expected him to go for the takedown, or at least try to force the clinch early and often, and he really didn't. Yeah.
So I think Adesanya's like lack of urgency when it was on the feet, it might be like he seemed to me like he was doing a sparring session. Like he was winning, and he's doing, say you're doing a sparring session with a buddy, and you're doing 12 rounds, 15 rounds, whatever it is, where you're just kind of throwing things out there and touching instead of really saying, hey, I have 25 minutes. These 5 rounds are so important. Each round is 20% of the fight. Put it on it more. And to me, there was the gap in the striking. I felt like Adesanya was winning. I felt like he was landing the better shots. But to me, the fight was right there for him, and he just didn't take it. Now, I'm going to sound like a hypocrite because I still scored it for him. But like I said, and I had a couple friends over, we were watching. I said to them, like, don't be shocked if Adesanya gets this decision. But you have to feel pretty comfortable if you're Blachowicz corner, because you have 2 rounds in the bag. You only need 1 of the 3 other rounds to win. So way I was scoring it, you had to be perfect for Adesanya. You had to sweep all 3 rounds. And a lot of people didn't give him to that. So let's talk about the individual, performances. Let's talk about Blachowicz for a second. Is it time? I mean, it's got to be time that we start giving this guy respect. I mean, besides being the champion, he's now defended his title against a guy that he was the underdog, as we mentioned, over and over and over again. He was the underdog once again. Like, when are we? I mean, he's got to be the favorite against Glover Teixeira, correct?
I don't know if he'll be the betting favorite, but I am not picking against him again. I am an asshole. I am so tired of this. I mean, on the preview, I laid it out. He has been the underdog. He had been the underdog in 8 of his last 10 fights. Now it's 9 of 11, and he has gone 9-2 in those fights. We keep underestimating him. I mean, he was an underdog to Devin Clark. And I mean, that sounds like I'm denigrating Devin Clark, but Devin Clark is not yet a championship level fighter, and Jan Blachowicz obviously is, QED. He was an underdog against Nikita Krylov. He was an underdog against Luke Rockhold, like coming up in weight, debuting in the division, and still dizzy from getting knocked the hell out by Yoel Romero. And he was a greater than 2-1 favorite over Blachowicz. We keep sleeping on this guy, and he keeps proving us wrong. And yeah, good for him. That's as much as I have to say about it. I can't even break down the technical parts of it. I mean, we've already laid that out.
Yeah, and we're still looking for people to post their scorecards in there. Tell us how you scored the fight. I know all three of the judges for doing the official play-by-play on Sherdog, they all three gave it to Blachowicz. Ben also gave it for Blachowicz. It was a very close fight. One thing I really liked about Blachowicz getting the win, it was how he won, that it was his wrestling late. And there was a time when Blachowicz was such a terrible wrestler. To me, this really summed up the turnaround of his career. Like, not only did he win, but he won by getting takedowns. Like, a thing when I was sitting there in Buffalo, New York, and he was losing and getting taken down over and over again, to see him win a UFC title matchup in the 5th round by using wrestling, it just shows how much growth this guy has, made over the years, and it's so impressive.
Yeah. Kind of lost in the tale that I told of how he keeps getting underestimated is that he has made big strides forward. When he came over from KSW, and he is still arguably the most accomplished KSW fighter to come over to the UFC. I mean, they were still in a tournament-based format at the time, but he had mopped up those tournaments. And he was kind of a super prospect, even though he was 30 or something at the time. And he had a rough early going in the UFC, and that's why we slept on him. But I've just been really slow to change my mind and kind of realize how good he is.
Yeah. Other thing that I thought when I watched Israel Adesanya is I felt like he gave too much respect for the power. That he was a little hesitant to really step in and unload on his shots because, he knows the power that Blachowicz has. I mean, I think it was his last 2 fights prior to this. I remember he knocked out Corey Anderson. He knocked out Dominic Reyes. So I understand why you'd be hesitant, especially giving up 20, 25, maybe 30 pounds come fight night. So I understand that hesitation there. But if that's the case, if you're not going to step in the pocket, to me, he had to just be outputting more teep kicks, more leg kicks, more spinning attacks, more jabs, more lateral movement. And I felt like to kind of stand right in front of him, and I felt like you really kept Blachowicz in the fight. And that's what Blachowicz needed to. Like, he kind of had 2 avenues. One avenue, well, 3 avenues, but the 2 most obvious is one is landing the big shot, which obviously we know has. The other thing is to keep it close and get some takedowns. And that's exactly what happened. So we got a lot. Usually we spend a lot more time on the main event. We'll spend a little bit more time, but we'll try to make it a little quicker than we normally do. But let me ask you this question. How much of a factor was the size difference? Was it a big factor, especially in the 4th and 5th round, or was it simply that is a area of Israel Adesanya's game that we haven't seen enough, and it's a little bit of a blueprint going forward that if you can take him down and hold him down, you're going to win?
It was at least a bit of a factor. We've seen Adesanya taken down before. We've seen him held down for a certain amount of time and some damage inflicted on him, like not a ton. The thing is, Blachowicz hit Adesanya cleanly on the feet and on the ground more than any of his opponents up until now. Like, you think of his fights that were so-called close or tense or grindy, like the Vettori fight, the Gastelum fight, anything like that. No. I don't know it for a fact, but I'm sure that Blachowicz landed more strikes on Adesanya than probably all of his other UFC opponents put together. And part of that has to be due to the size. Blachowicz is a good wrestler, but he took Adesanya down effortlessly once he started trying. It was effortless. And it was fairly effortless to keep him down. He kept him down with just real bread and butter top position grappling and didn't have to be real slick or sneaky about it. Like, I'm going to move to half guard, and later in the round, I'm going to move to side control just because they will never stand us up from side control. Whereas, itchy ref might stand us up from half guard. And just kept chipping and chopping away, and Adesanya couldn't do anything. Like, there wasn't even a serious attempt at a sweep or an escape in that 5th round.
No. I know at one point he looked like he was trying to set up a triangle. It just wasn't. It was stopped before he even set up. Yeah, I agree. There was definitely a size factor. I mean, especially deeper you go in the fight, you start resting on him, tiring him out. But also, I got to give credit to Blachowicz, especially in the 5th round, he was it was probably most people's cards 2-2. The round started off looking pretty good for Adesanya. He was and like the moment he got the takedown, Adesanya was starting to open up a little bit, and he used that opening when Adesanya was opening up to go right underneath them, get the takedown, and probably won him the fight. Actually, not probably, it did win him the fight. Second part of that question is, if you're a fan of Israel Adesanya, does this concern you, going forward in the middleweight division, that he has been held down, he has been out wrestled? Does that worry you? Is this something that's gonna become the way people beat him?
People have tried, and it's not as easy as Blachowicz made it look, and that's why I think size is part of this. I mean, Derek Brunson is a very good wrestler, and when Brunson fought Robert Whittaker, he ran straight at him and flailed like a madman and got clocked. I was like, well, if he does that to Adesanya, it's going to be even worse. But
Sure.
He didn't. He fought to his best advantage, and Adesanya just danced circles around him and punched him in the head as he ran by. It was ridiculous. We saw Kelvin Gastelum. No, I mean, I'm worried about it if I'm a Adesanya fan or I'm at Adesanya's camp. But if it was as easy for a middleweight to do it as Blachowicz did, I mean, maybe somebody would have done it by now. And even looking down the middleweight top 10, I'm like, well, who's going to do that?
Yeah.
It's not a very wrestly division right now.
Yeah. So let's get into it. We talk about who's going to do it. Let's matchmake these guys for a second. So we're going to be matchmaking 2 different weight classes, light heavyweight and for Adesanya middleweight, because he's still the champion in the middleweight division. Let's start with the champion at light heavyweight, Jan Blachowicz. So other than if John Jones decided that maybe he doesn't want to go to the heavyweight, he decides, I want to go back down to light heavyweight. Other than if John Jones decides, I'm assuming we're in agreement that Glover Teixeira is the guy. They mentioned on the broadcast. Blachowicz was asked about him. He, basically said, I want to fight this guy. He deserves it. Very gentleman type, response. I understand it too, because he was in that same position. He wasn't the sexy pick, but he was the guy who earned it. And I love that he wants to fight the guy who earned it. I'm assuming it's unanimous. That's the matchup.
It's unanimous, and I think it's probably again, failing John Jones dropping back out of the sky, I think it's pretty much a done deal for Glover Teixeira to drag his poor old ass to the sauna this week and make weight as a backup.
Oh, yeah.
I'm hoping that he got A, an envelope of cash, and B, a handshake agreement that, okay, you are
the guy. Yeah, that's a great point, because I actually forgot that Glover Teixeira weighed in. I wasn't able to watch the weigh-ins live, so I actually didn't see him weigh in. I kind of forgot about it. Yeah, that's a really good one. That's always a good sign. Think about it for a second. Does that matchup? So two-part question. One, does that matchup headline a pay-per-view, or do you need something sexier above it? Or did Blachowicz do enough to make himself sexy by beating, the sexy, hyped-up guy in Adesanya?
I think you want something sexier to headline over it, but in the era we currently find ourselves, it probably will end up headlining one either by design or by being the co-main event and getting promoted to the main when something happens.
I actually wouldn't mind it underneath the John Jones fight. If, John Jones, the heavyweight title is coming down in, 3 weeks from today, or give or take, I think it's, 3 weeks. And then you figure the turnaround for that, sometime summertime, I wouldn't mind it being a co-main event on a John Jones card, because then you have the light heavyweight, you could still do a call out, hey, John, we're still at light heavyweight, whatever. That's what I would like to do.
Especially if John loses.
Especially if John loses. Yeah, that's a great point. Second part, would this be the two nicest guys in MMA fighting each other?
I hesitate to just jump right out and say that, because I'm sure there have been some that I've forgotten, but it would be up there.
Yeah.
They're just two of the most genial guys. And we're not talking about kind of this weird forced, forced smile type thing. Just two super, super nice dudes. And
yeah,
we're not fans of fighters here. It doesn't matter inside the cage, but certainly if we get a few more people that are pleasant to deal with outside the cage, I don't hate that. So, yeah.
Yeah. So Kelvin Teixeira, he's Brazilian, but he lives in Connecticut. I live in Rhode Island. We're very close to each other. I see him at all the local fights. He's just the nicest guy. Like anybody can go up to him, talk to him. You see it all the time. He's just a great stand-up guy.
So what Keith is saying is he's going to pick against him, but he's going to feel bad about it.
Yeah, of course. If you ever listen to the Breakdown show, I always pick against New Englanders. So yeah, I had friends over and stuff, and I was saying like I'm picking Adesanya, but like you got to feel good to see Blachowicz win because like how nice and how just seems like a great dude. You'd feel the same way with Glover Teixeira. So it's one of those matchups I'd be happy regardless, especially if Glover wins because he's been there, he's been doing it so long. Blachowicz has had his moment. Be nice, Teixeira when he's been given up on so many times to actually win the title. Let's do the heart of matchmaker now. Now it's Israel Adesanya. The hardest thing is there's kind of two things. He's wiped out the division. Number two is no one's really kind of got on this week-long winning streak. So I'll throw it out to you. If you're matchmaking Israel Adesanya's next title shot at middleweight, who are you doing?
Okay, so I'm not going to say winner of because it depends on who wins.
Sure.
Kevin Holland and Derek Brunson are fighting. If Kevin Holland wins, he's in.
Okay.
Marvin Vettori and Darren Till are fighting. If Holland doesn't win, whoever wins out of those two.
Yeah. So I'm going to do winner of, and mine would be the winner of Vettori Till. Especially if Till wins, because Till's also very marketable. They're both like that. This quirky type of like jokes to them. I think that'd be kind of fun, like little press conference between the two of them. They'd probably like meme each other's face and stuff and have a little fun with it. Yeah, if I was actually doing it, so it might be Till, then Holland, and then Vettori because he has faced Vettori. So we've already seen that.
Exactly.
But Vettori, he looks sensational. If he gets he just beat Jack Hermanson. If he gets a win over Till, I mean, that's like two really, really good wins. So, but then, Kevin Holland would have a good win over Derek Brunson. But, I mean, what could happen is Vettori and Brunson could both win, and he's already faced both of them. Say Whitaker Whitaker or Costa, either one of them win. You'd have like the three leading candidates, all guys he's already beaten. So there is... It was probably a bad thing for the UFC that Adesanya didn't win tonight. It would have been probably better for the division. Adesanya win, maybe eventually relinquish the middleweight title. Like that probably would have worked out better for the UFC. But that is not always the case. All right. You ready to move on?
I think so, yeah.
All right, because we got 2 more title fights, and then after that, we have 12 more fights to talk about. Amanda Nunes versus Megan Anderson. Amanda Nunes came into the fight defending her featherweight title. She was a ridiculously massive favorite, and she does Amanda Nunes thing. What I love about so she ran through Megan Anderson, but what I love about Amanda Nunes is it seems like when you give someone a chance and you say like, okay, Holly Holm, fantastic. Former world champion kickboxer, former world champion boxer. Her best chance is, making a boxing match, and then she gets high kicked in the head. Miesha Tate, was always a wrestling grappler. She gets choked out. Whatever. Chris Cyborg. Oh, man, Nunes better not stand with Chris Cyborg. Chris Cyborg has all his power. She knocks Chris Cyborg out. Megan Anderson, she's big. Well, she's got such an advantage on the ground. Take her right down. Beat her up, and that's actually how she finished it. But she was the one who shot for a takedown. It was Megan Anderson, and it was Megan Anderson because she got hurt. She started doing those ice skating legs where she's flipping and flopping around, overhand right. Man, like should I still be so impressed with me, or with Amanda Nunes, or does it get to the point you just get used to it? Because I'm still amazed every time.
She was, depending on your sports book of choice, a 10-1 to 12-1 favorite. Most people I knew were picking Nunes to run right through her, and she still managed to impress me.
Yeah, me too.
You forget, and you have to be reminded. Her power, you could see it the first time she hit Anderson cleanly. Like, Anderson wasn't rocked; she was shocked.
Yes,
it was like you could just see it go through her head. I've never been hit that hard in my life.
That's right. Like, I wasn't ready. Like, that instant,
Yeah.
I wasn't ready. Oh, my God, this is the goat I'm facing. And be careful, like, what you ask for. With Megan Anderson, remember the storyline about her is, like, how big she is. I mean, and I feel always weird saying how big she is because, you know, I'm talking about a female. I don't want to come off like body shame. I'm not saying, I mean, she's 6 feet tall. She's got huge, long legs. Was like 6 inches taller than Amanda Nunes. Like, whatever. Like, the size advantage, she should have had the strength advantage. She was the first one, or, you know, since Chris Cyborg that you could actually see landing a one-punch knockout or a one-kick knockout. Like, she had those things on her side. She walks around. You hear the stories that she walks around about 175 pounds.
Yeah, she has said she cuts from like 170 to 175.
Yeah.
Like, so that's in camp shape. She cuts from like 170, 175.
So she was probably 165, 168, maybe 170 for this fight. You know, you figure Nunes, you know, obviously much bigger too, but, you know, this is a big girl. And the combination of accuracy and power to me is just absolutely unmatched by Amanda Nunes.
Yep.
Then you see, you know, then she forces Megan Anderson to shoot. So now it was right away a bad sign. If you're a Megan Anderson coach and she starts shooting for takedowns, you knew it was already over.
Yeah.
Then she locks in. You know, I think they said it was an inverted triangle. I think that's what they gave her. Is that what they gave her? Right? It was an inverted triangle, right? Or did they say it was an armbar? I don't know what they gave the official. Was it an armbar?
I mean, in the end, it looked like an inverted triangle armbar. I mean, you know, because she was cutting off the circulation. She also had the arm torqued across her hip. So it was a classic triangle armbar. She was just north of her when it happened, you know. But, yeah, beautiful finish and seamless grappling once it started. Obviously, Nunes was going to have a big advantage on the ground, but it was airtight. She never even gave her an opportunity to get out of there or even recover.
Yeah.
Because like the ground and pound she started to land was just that thing was going to be over in one or two more punches. Anderson kind of turns and squirms, and Nunes just takes what she gives her.
Yeah. So besides absolutely rocking a girl much bigger than her, then she finishes with a very rare type submission, just absolutely incredible. So this, I don't really want to go with this because there's so many wonderful things to talk about Amanda Nunes. I don't want to talk about who's next for her yet, but I want to talk about this. And this might be a little controversial. I know this is tough. We always talk about separating men from females. It's hard to compare. Amanda Nunes is the absolute consensus GOAT for female. It's the true consensus, not when like Joe Rogan says Max Holloway is a consensus featherweight. Like, this is the true GOAT at female. Like, I don't know a single person other than Scott Coker who argues otherwise. But when do we start just comparing her to the men? Like, when does she start moving from the greatest female fighter of all time to just the greatest fighter of all time?
I'm comfortable calling her that now. We're talking about imaginary, theoretic, ephemeral things anyway. So any reason you would give for, separating genders, they can't fight each other. Well, you know what? Fedor and Demetrius Johnson can never fight each other either, and we put them on the same list.
Yeah, of course.
She's probably the most dominant fighter we've ever seen, and yeah, I'm comfortable calling her at this point like the greatest, most dominant, most accomplished mixed martial artist we've ever seen. Or I'm comfortable just rating her right alongside the rest of everybody's kind of top five that we always throw out there.
Yeah, I agree. So I think about it, if I'm etching the Mount Rushmore of greatest, not the faces, because if you're doing the faces, then obviously Conor McGregor, you got to be, I'm just saying the greatest fighters. I'm picking basically the top four fighters. Well, John Jones and George St. Pierre are taking two of those spots. And then it starts getting, who do I put in? And to me now, you kind of have to put Amanda Nunes in there. And then, figure out I'm not going to get into the debate, but figure out the fourth spot later. But to me, she has to be, right?
I agree. Like, I'm one of the people, and you and I are both members of Sherdog's official rankings panel. But I'm one of the ones who would be fine if we just had a single pound for pound list, and that was maybe 15 fighters long instead of 10.
Yeah. So this is how I
Like
feel
right now.
about. So this is how I feel about that. If there's a pound for pound list, and why I want to separate, because then we suddenly start ranking her way too low. Because to me, if you're combining men and women, and the way pound for pound is so subjective, how people look at it. I don't look at it as who would win if they're all the same weight. I don't do it that way because Demetrius Johnson, if he was heavyweight, he'd have longer arms. If he, it's kind of like it's too much. So I always kind of like how dominant are they compared to their competition. It's the way I do who's the greatest baseball player ever. That's what I do. Whatever. Well, if you do it by my criteria, how is Amanda Nunes not just number one? I mean, does anybody dominate their competition more than Amanda Nunes does? Does John Jones
really,
dominate his competition better than Amanda Nunes? I don't think.
Maybe not recently. In his prime, like his
Sure.
run,
Yeah. When he was choking out Lyoto Machida and playing with Rashad Evans, and yeah.
I'm glad you brought him up because he is my best comparison to her. Where you look at his legacy and like in his prime, he beat basically all the other best fighters of his era, in a weight class that he could compete at. Like he beat I think like the 4 UFC champions before him. He beat Daniel Cormier once officially very badly, beat him badly another time that is not an official win. And yeah, that's the same kind of thing Nunes has done. She's beaten all the other women. There's nothing missing from her.
Yeah.
There's not Fedor never fought so-and-so. Whether you think that's a valid argument or a specious one, there's no such argument for Nunes. She's beaten, and I know I've said this on the show before, she's beaten every other woman who's ever held a UFC or Bellator title in either of the divisions that she competes in. Right. Plus, she's beaten the greatest flyweight of all time twice.
Yeah.
There's nobody.
If Nico Montana gets a title shot, then she would wipe out the flyweight division champions too. She'd have 3 weight classes. Mm-hmm. It's absolutely incredible. So let's do what's next. Now, I'm going to go first this time because I know what people are saying. If I ask people what should be next, people are throw out Valentina Shevchenko. I'm in the minority. I've seen the matchup twice. I understand. Now, listen to me. I understand that the only person that has a realistic chance of beating Amanda Nunes right now is Valentina Shevchenko. I understand that. I really do. The problem is she's had 2 shots. And now you could argue she won the second one. A lot of people do. Whatever. We're not. That was years ago. I'm not arguing it. Whatever. What I'm going to say is she had 2 shots. She lost. Let's just enjoy greatness. And it goes for both of them. Like, let them both just win and let's just enjoy a streak. Let's just keep throwing it out, and then one day someone will pull a massive upset over Amanda Nunes, and then it can just feel even more special. So to me, like go back to bantamweight, defend the title. I was going through the rankings. I was looking at who's matched up. I was looking at who's on a winning streak. And the only person, based on the highest ranking, based on not being matched up, based on not coming off a loss, or have recently fought Amanda Nunes, I'm giving the next title shot to Yana Kunitskaya. That's what I'm doing. It's not sexy.
It's either her or Juliana Pena.
Yeah, well, Juliana Pena's booked against Holly Holm.
That's right.
So, I mean, you could wait and see if she wins, but then what if Holly Holm? So, but that's what I'm doing. I'm doing insert next person who's going to be, a plus 1,000 underdog against her. No one give her a shot. And just to me, I just want to keep doing it. Do it as long as you possibly can. Do it a year from now. Do it 2 years from now. See, maybe 5 years from now. So she finally just says, I don't want to do it. Or she finally loses a step and that someone beats her. Or time has come where someone actually looks like a legit challenge. Like, that's what I want to do. Are you with me, or is it Valentina Shevchenko?
I'm with you. I don't really have any desire to see her versus Val again for the reasons you mentioned. One, say Val beats her this time and it's a close fight. What have we learned? What have we gained? Are they going to do best 3 out of 5? Also,
yeah, that's a good point.
Unlike Nunes, Shevchenko has some interesting challenges coming along in her own division.
Yeah, sure.
Like, I want to see her fight Jessica Andrade.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and then you made a good point. Like, say Valentina Shevchenko does beat her. Well, we got to hold up the flyweight division again because now if Valentina Shevchenko beats her, as you mentioned, now it's 2-1. Well, then Amanda Nunes got to get a rematch, and then we're holding it up. And now Valentina wins again? Now it's 2-2. Like we're gonna hold both divisions for actually really 3 divisions when you think about featherweight, if it's still a division. Yeah, I mean that seems like the only matchup, but to me, let them both just go on big winning streaks. How about Megan Anderson? Is it to me, you got to go outside, and if you want to build a division and like bring in like a Pam Sorensen or something like that, or do you just is it time just to scrap the division, or just do kind of one off that the division doesn't matter, just kind of do one offs? Like what should we do with her?
I mean, they're either going to need to poach someone from Invicta, so that would be someone like Pam Sorensen, Caitlin Young, Chelsea Chandler.
Sure.
They need to make a big money offer and bring Kayla Harrison over and have her fight Megan before Kayla gets a title shot. Or rumor had it that Cyborg was in the building tonight.
But she's all right. I'm not going down that route.
How long is her? I
don't know.
Dude,
I don't know.
If you ask me who's next for someone at featherweight, you're
Sure.
going to get a long, meandering, and
Yeah.
meaningless answer because there is nothing.
No, it might be Danielle Wolf if she can pull a win. All right, so that's 2 title fights. Neither fight, the champion walked away. Both champions walked away with the title. That was not the case with the first title shot. Okay, do you want to say something?
I hate to drag this back to featherweight for just a second,
Okay,
but
go ahead.
Danielle Wolf, she's debuting in the UFC. If she beats Felicia Spencer, is she getting a title shot?
Yeah,
2 fights removed from Dana White's Contender Series?
Yeah, she absolutely is.
All right.
Absolutely she is.
Time to shut that fucking division down. That's ridiculous.
No, but yeah, she is. And if she beats Felicia Spencer, she's ranked number 2 in the division. So it's not like oh my god, she went way off. Like no, she's facing the number 2 girl now. That's just how terrible. And honestly, it's UFC's own fault because Bellator has been grabbing other talent in that division that was available that you didn't get. I'm not saying the Olga Rubins and all, and Sinead Kavanaghs and all these would have been real legit challenges, but maybe you just needed bodies. You needed numbers. If you're 145 pounds and you fight at 145 and you're not in Bellator right now, if I'm the UFC, I'm signing you. Pretty much, just to give you bodies. Yep. All right. This is a tough one. So, Petr Yan versus Jamaine Sterling. Petr Yan walked into the cage with the belt. He did not walk out of the cage with the belt. Jamaine Sterling did. Well, Eric Nixick actually carried the belt out.
Yep.
Jamaine Sterling won the title. He won by DQ. Jay Petch, you might have to check this, but I don't remember a champion ever winning the title before with DQ. I mean, we had almost a scenario with Anthony Smith, but I'm 99.99% sure this is the first time ever.
I think you're probably right. And while he looks that up, quick shout out, Sherdog associate editor Jay Petrie, just because he rules, does fact checking for us during these shows. If you do not read his column, Fight Facts, you are missing out because it is your shortcut to be the smartest MMA fan among your friends and wow them with your knowledge and your acumen. You owe it yourself to read that thing on Monday mornings because he is the man with the stats, the facts, and the figures.
Okay.
A champion has never won the title by disqualification, says Mr. J. Petrie.
Yeah. Okay, so let's pause the disqualification because we're going to spend a lot of time on it. Let's just talk about the actual action for a second. Jamaine Sterling looked fantastic for 2 minutes into the fight, maybe 2.5 minutes, and then to me, one punch changed the entire fight. One punch by Petr Yan landed a perfectly timed right hand. While Sterling was kind of dropping his punches, he was kind of leaning back a little bit, dropped him with it, and everything came apart at that point. Do you agree with that statement or disagree?
In general, I agree. He got off to a great start. And even after that, I thought he was having a pretty good fight, even if I thought he was on his way to losing and Yan was taking charge. But yeah, the first time Jan really landed a clean punch on him, changed something.
Yeah. So I have two things that I thought Petr Yan was doing very well, and I think there was two things that, to me, Jamaine Sterling wasn't doing well. I had Petr Yan up 3-0 in the fourth round. The judges did not have that. One of the judges actually had Sterling up winning a round. So this was, in the fourth round, was still very up in the air. So
yeah, it was absurd, but yeah.
I had Petr Yan cruising at that point. To me, two things really jumped out. One was how composed he was. He was never panicked. Even when Sterling kind of came out the gate and was pressuring him, and he just made adjustments. Like, he just like, okay, it's not liking. It seemed like, okay, I'm not winning here. He made an adjustment. The other thing I really liked was that he added in some of his own takedowns. And not necessarily he was trying to get on top, just to kind of mess up the rhythm, mess up some of the things Sterling was doing. So I like that. Some of the two bad things that jumped out to me about Sterling. One, and I would have, if I was in his corner, I would have told him, like, slow down. You're doing well in the stand-up. Like, it's competitive. You're having a lot of moments. You're landing a lot of shots, especially some good kicks to the body, good kicks to the legs. Stand up with him a little more. Have more confidence in your stand-up because you're doing okay. And the other thing I would have told him is, like, not only to stand up with him, like, stop doing stuff that isn't working. Like, he was shooting just to tire himself out. He was basically, I would have understood that the wrestling's not there. Now, could he throw in a takedown with perfectly timed takedown late in the round? Sure. But he was going by that, I'm going to shoot 30 times. I only need to get it once kind of thing. And then he was doing this, like, spinning. He was kept trying to land spinning shots, but giving up his back when he was doing it. It just wasn't working. And I'd be like, dude, just abandon any of that stuff and just stand up and have a kickboxing matchup. That's what I would have been told in his corner. That's what, if I was in his corner, I would have been telling him. What did you take away from the fight?
A lot of the same things. I was surprised at what good success he had landing his punches. Sterling was already a good kicker when he arrived in the UFC. His boxing has really come along, but I think I said on the preview, it's not going to matter because Jan's the best boxer in the division. Like, that's not where Sterling's going to make any headway. He was making headway. He was landing some shots, and he was stopping Yan from just completely teeing off on him at will. I agree that the spinning attacks did not serve him well. The kind of forced and telegraphed takedown attempts did not serve him well. There was a point in the fight where he was like 1 for 10 takedowns, and Yan was like 5 for 6.
Yeah.
And you were right that Yan would just kind of toss him down with ridiculously easy trips a couple of times and wouldn't really try to spend any time down there because the last thing he wants to do is dive into Sterling's guard when Sterling's not hurt. Like, that's how you're going to lose your belt.
Yeah.
He was smart to just make Sterling a little more tired and make him just that much more tentative in the stand-up. And by the time he was doing that, Sterling was already getting very tentative in the stand-up. But just the thought that, okay, if I clinch with Yan, he's just going to throw this little trip and, like, dump me on my ass. Yeah, like, really smart stuff from Yan. I thought it was ironic that the UFC booth said in round 2 or round 3 that Sterling, well, I shouldn't say the UFC booth. Joe Rogan said that Sterling was the one who looked like a champ, because I thought the absolute exact opposite was true. Yan looked like the champ in the sense that even when this exact moment's action might not be going my way, I am in control of this fight.
Yeah.
Like, this is my house. That was the vibe I got from Yan really the whole time. After, like you say, after about the first 2 minutes where Sterling's, like, forward movement and pace kind of had him on his heels. After that, Yan controlled this fight until he did one of the most dumb fuck things I've seen in quite a while.
Yeah, so Yan, he's always been a slow starter. Like, we talked about that. Like, I thought it was a good strategy. Like, Sterling didn't mind, and Sterling's always been kind of like a fast starter. We saw that in the Sandhagen fight. I think he didn't have to come out that hard, but he definitely was working. Now, there's a lot to talk about now. So, well, first I'll say this: Yan, I agree with you. Like, he was controlling. I had him up 3-0, and to me, the rounds were starting to get further and further apart in the distance. Like, he was pulling away from the pack. Like, to me, the fourth round was going to be worse than the third round, and the fifth round was probably going to be worse than the fourth round. He looked like, in my opinion, that he was going to cruise to a blowout victory. And we were talking about him moving up the pound-for-pound rankings. He probably would have made the Bulls and the Bears list. Like, it was looking to be a sensational night. Like I was really thinking about talking about, now he's truly going to be viewed as the champion, this and that. Now let me ask you this. Okay, let's just get right into it. Let's go about the DQ. Was it the right call? Should it have been a disqualification, or should the referee ruled it a no contest?
Disqualification.
Okay, so we're in agreement. I totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know the rules. It's just simply you have to know the rules. Mark Smith was telling him he was down. In fairness to Petr Yan, he doesn't speak English that well. I don't know if he speaks it at all, to be honest. He uses a translator. Habib Nurmagomedov was cage-side. He supposedly overheard Petr Yan ask his team, like, do I hit him here? Like, basically asking him if he's up or down. And supposedly his team said, yes, hit him. Maybe it was a miscommunication between them saying where they were telling him to hit him or what. To me, it's one of those you have to 100% know before you throw it. Check, double check, triple check. Can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. Obviously, nobody wanted to see the fight end this way. Least of all Sterling. I mean, Sterling, I don't think that was an act at all. I think he was completely upset. I think he would rather have lost than won that way.
Yeah.
So, like, I think literally nobody comes out of this looking happy.
Yeah.
I know that Jan's English is limited, but dude, he knows yes and no.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and if he asks his corner and they give him the wrong advice, then shame on them. But that's part of it, being part of a team. I do want to address something that you kind of just hinted at. I don't think Jamaine Sterling was faking. Obviously, only he would really know if he was playing it up. He looked very hurt. It was a extremely clean head. It was looked like it was right to the side of the head, right near the temple area. Yeah. So if you're on Twitter and you're calling one of the baddest dudes on the planet like a faker and a bitch and all that stuff, you see it's like, dude, you're an idiot. Like, he would kill you. He could literally, if you met him in the street, he could literally take your life. So you're an idiot. Anyways, to me, okay. So here's a second question: when a champion gets disqualified, should they lose the belt, or should it be like WF style where you can't lose the belt by disqualification? And I know what we're talking about.
I think they should lose the belt. I mean, otherwise, not saying anyone would have done this, but you're opening up the door for a champ to retain their belt when they're losing a fight by intentionally getting themselves DQ'd.
That's exactly what I wrote down, because if you didn't say it, I was going to say the same thing. It's there. It's a slippery slope. Suddenly I'm losing. Oh, no. Let me do something illegal to at least keep my belt.
Hey, I am on record as saying that that's how Greg Hardy lost his first loss in the UFC. Like, he did a blatantly illegal knee to a down foe, and I think it's because he was gassing out and he knew he was going to lose otherwise.
I don't know. I'm not in his head, but if you, yeah. It's tough. Petr Yan always had a tough situation because that division, remember, TJ Dillashaw held the title. He was stripped of the title. Henry Cejudo won the title. He gave it up. Petr Yan, is the champion, and he gets disqualified. Like, I feel bad for Aljamain Sterling. He's going to be in the record books forever. His name will always be under as UFC champion forever. No matter what, he's going to be called, UFC champion, a former UFC champion. I just feel so bad for him. I know it's like, I never felt like I feel bad for a champion, but like, he's not going to get respect. And there'll be some people will be hating on him for no reason, no fault of his own.
Well, it's a little like what I was saying about Jan Blachowicz heading into this weekend. The narrative will all hinge on what happens next. They're certainly going to rematch next. There's literally nothing else to do.
Absolutely.
If Sterling wins, well, then all is fine and well. You're going to have a trilogy, but all is fine and well. He proves that he did at least deserve to have that title at some point. If he loses, and especially if he loses as bad or worse as he was losing tonight, then yeah, it's cruel, it's unfair, but yeah, the narrative's going to be there that he was never a real champ.
Yeah.
And that sucks.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, that'll be like a little asterisk. I just feel really bad for him. I agree. Automatic rematch. I think about Corey Sandhagen and I guess TJ Dillashaw. That talks about them fighting each other and then one contender match. They're gonna have to wait a little bit longer. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing else to say. It was the right call. It reminded me. So I feel like Sterling. I always saw people hating on Sterling because people are idiots on Twitter. I feel for Sterling like the way I felt for. Do you remember when the Canadian the figure skating team, the couple, they had like the best figure skating thing, and the judges cheated and they didn't give them the right scores. Do you remember that in the Olympics? Like, it might have been.
I don't, but okay. I know I don't follow figure skating quite as closely as you do.
You're not as deep into the figure skating realm as I am. But anyways, long story short, like every time they talked about the thing, I felt bad for the ones who got the gold medal, which was, I believe it was Russian. See, now I'm going to have to dumb down my knowledge so I don't get made fun of. But I believe it was a Russian team. Like, I remember thinking, like, I feel bad for them because this is not their fault. It's not their fault that other judges cheated. And I feel the same way with Sterling. It's not his fault Petr Yan made a mistake.
And can I throw something out there? Like, obviously the ramifications are not his fault, but even the ruling in the moment is not his fault. I love that Justin Gaethje, of all people, like tweeted this like within 5 minutes of when the foul happened. This shouldn't be up to the fighter at all. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if Sterling could have gotten back up. This isn't an eye poke or a nut shot.
No.
Like, if you don't get 5 minutes to recover from a concussion. Like,
no.
that's a fight. That's a technique that would have been legal in a different location. And honestly, if that were legal, that fight was over. Like, Jan was going to jump on and punch him 3 times, and that shit was over.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter that if Sterling could have stood up after 2 minutes. Like, you don't get 2 minutes to recover from an illegal knee to the head. Like, it's not a shot to the cup.
Yeah, and concussion's a serious thing. We talk about, like, it's not getting 5 minutes recovery. It takes weeks, days, weeks, months. Some people never recover. I mean, there's been sport athletes whose career had been ruined because of concussions.
And I like that MMA tends to be quicker to stop a fight for a concussion. Like, I think the standing 8 count has killed more people, like in boxing, than anything.
What's the guy there? I can't think of his name. The Team Alpha Male guy who got a concussion. Ultimate Fighter winner. He won the Ultimate Fighter. He never fought again. He had a concussion. They had supposedly TJ Dillashaw.
He blames TJ Dillashaw for it. And now I'm just totally spacing.
Yeah, it's 2:30 in the morning. I can't think of his name. If people know, a little blonde guy. If you guys know who I'm talking about, like, that's why concussions are serious. Like, Sterling might never recover from this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just a tough situation. But he's a champion, so at least enjoy it. You know, you got the belt.
Chris Holdsworth, yes, good. I'm sure someone either gave that to us, but we'll take credit for it anyways. Jay Petri. I owe him another beer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
much nicer. I always stole the credit for it. Before that, Islam Makhachev just continues to roll against Judo, but we both felt like this was a bad stylistic matchup, and I don't know if what I was more impressed with or I enjoyed more, like the performance by Islam Makhachev, or like DC breaking down what he was doing on like the screen. Like, that was just fantastic, showing his foot placement, his controlling the upper and lower body. His wrestling is just off the charts. And we both love wrestling. I love a performance like that. His timing, his changing of angles, just incredible.
And then once he was on top, just smothering, suffocating.
Oh.
And I do love that he did not cruise at any point.
No.
I mean, he could have easily just won a 30-26, 30-25 fight, but he got the finish in the 3rd round when he didn't really have to. But he's just so airtight on top that he's doing it at no risk to himself, so why not go for the finish?
Yeah. What I was so impressed about, like, every single time Dober had like even the smallest little opening and it seemed like he was going to scramble out, like, Makhachev would just turn his hips or slide, like, and it was like instantly, like the door was just closed, and just I couldn't imagine how mentally draining that is for a fighter. But you've been working, trying to find it for the moment. You think you got it, and nope, he actually just moved him out, or he moved to a head and arm triangle, or like insert all the things he was doing. Got a late submission, third round submission. Just I was blown away with Islam Makhachev's performance. To me, he's got to face a top 10 guy next. Like, he has to.
I agree. My only reservation before this was that he's been gone for a long time.
Sure.
How does he look? Answer: he looks fucking great.
Incredible.
Time for a top 10 opponent.
All right, so to me, there's not much to say. Like, this is what we expect to happen. This is what happened. Not much to fill in. I would give him Tony Ferguson.
I like that.
What would you do?
I mean, off the top of the head, that works for me.
Okay.
I was thinking of someone in the Tony Ferguson kind of Kevin Lee neighborhood of accomplishment. Ferguson is someone who will definitely test him. Ferguson's a very good wrestler himself, and has many, many ways to punish him if he's sloppy or leaves any openings.
Yeah.
Like Tony Ferguson, if Islam leaves any openings on the ground, we'll slap an anaconda choke on him, or just move around and take his back and make his life miserable, and at least win that round. I like that a lot, actually.
Yeah, I can't imagine too many people volunteering to face him. Like that.
Why would you want to? It looks miserable.
You know what would be a fun matchup? Not that I'm saying this is the match. He's already booked, and this is not the matchup I would make. I think Makhachev deserves a better matchup. But I would like to see him and Gregor Gillespie go at it. Just because, you got Makhachev's incredible wrestling, Greg Gillespie, former NCAA Division I national champion. Like, to me, that would be incredible. Seeing the scrimmels and between those two. Let me ask you one more question. So, Islam Makhachev is always going to be compared to Khabib Nurmagomedov, who was in his corner, same weight class, same kind of style. So, we both feel like Khabib is being truthful in his retirement. Dana sprinkled out this weekend saying, well, he hasn't told me to stop calling him. He hasn't, kind of still sprinkling out that it could, he could come back. Seeing Makhachev move up the rankings, does that make Khabib's, I'm trying to think what the word is, the chance of Khabib come back lessen? Like, that's his boy now, passing the torch to his boy to run that division.
I would say so. I would say that makes Khabib less likely to come back. I don't think he was ever going to come back because Conor McGregor taunted him into it, or Dana found enough money in the couch cushions. Like, if anything brought him back, it was going to be just pride or the right kind of challenge. It's why he said, "Give me George St. Pierre."
Yeah.
If Islam Makhachev, his guy, his homie, his more or less protege, is sitting on top, I think that pretty much kind of scratches that competitive itch for Khabib.
Yeah, I agree. All right, and open up the main card. We had a light heavyweight showdown. We had Thiago Santos versus Alexander Rakic. Rakic won by decision. To me, this was I thought it was kind of no-brainer, worst fight of the card.
It was, but it only sucked by comparison with this card. I didn't think it was a completely awful fight. It was
I guess Elliott versus Espinoza could have been kind of boring too.
It at least had a little extra spice.
Yeah, to me, Rakic.
We'll get to that.
Yeah. I don't know. I had a house full of people, so I was kind of missing out on what was the talk going on. But we'll get to that. So, to me, Rakic took what Santos gave him. Mm-hmm. He played it safe. I thought he controlled the fight. I thought he controlled where it went. He kind of forced Santos on his back foot, and he was calculated. There wasn't many openings, but he took the ones that were there. And also, I felt Santos is really starting to turn it into Tyron Woodley, where he's fighting off his back foot, backing himself off the cage, and just looking for that one shot.
And it might be for the same reasons that Tyron Woodley did that. Santos is now 37. He's had a major injury. I think it's time to ask whether Thiago Santos is on the downslide physically. Yeah,
well, we'll definitely get to that because someone might be on somebody's Bulls or Bears list. Let's matchmake Rakic real quick because he's in the title picture. He's kind of on a little streak here. But there's a little bit of a logjam up at the top of the division. A lot of guys have matched up. So I gave him Ankalaev just simply from everyone else is kind of matched up kind of thing. What would you do with him?
My first impulse is like, well, I don't want to do that because these are two guys who are just entering the top 10 for the first time.
That's right.
Why smash those two cards together before you have to? But it's early enough, just in terms of both their age and their kind of career trajectory, that a loss isn't a complete killer for either of them.
Mm. Yeah, I understand.
You take some of these guys, whether because of age, like Glover Teixeira's next loss is probably his last great hurrah. Dominic Reyes has not looked great recently. His next loss is like a big setback for him. I would say the same for Volkan Oezdemir. For Rakic and Ankalaev, they're both still on the way up. I mean, if they fight, whoever loses, they might meet again in the future anyway. So. Yeah,
I agree. All right, so that's the main card. Let's move on to the prelims. We have to try to speed this up a little bit. There's 10 more fights to do. Dominic Cruz went against Casey Kenny, a really good fight, really good back and forth battle, very, very close. This was technically the closest fight where we had a split decision. Can I just rant for a second?
Please, rant away.
So, Bruce Buffer is, he's very talented. He's good at what he does. But one thing I hate is when they kill the suspense of a scorecard. When it's 29-28, 29-28, 29-28 for one fighter, 29-28 for the other fighter, and then the third score they score is the 30-27, which really like, all right, so Cruz probably won it. Like, do 30-27 Cruz, 29-28 Kenny, and then build the spent 29-28, and they're like, oh, who could it be for? Then fill it in. Like, he does it all the time. He kills the suspense. Like, come on, man. Like, you don't have the hardest job in the world. Like, you do very little. Like, come on. Like, at least do that right.
Yeah. And he said Derek Cleary's name hundreds of times, and he still can't get it right.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey, he's Bruce Buffer, and I'm not.
Well, I can't trash on people's, pronouncing names right because I do terrible sometimes. Back to the actual action. This was a wicked good fight. This is one of my favorite fights. Both guys I thought looked really good. I was kind of writing the obituary for Dominic Cruz, and maybe I need to stop. I think he looked really good. I thought his movement was as good as it's been in a long time. His ability to land, backing up, land angles. But ultimately, what I was so impressed with is just how smart he is. I mean, he's always been the calculated thinker, but besides like the, technique of what I do, but the knowing the situation. It was the third round. Pretty much everyone had it. I shouldn't say pretty much everyone, but a lot of people had it one round each. The third round was, back and forth, maybe even leaning a little towards Kenny. And the perfectly timed takedown with maybe 40 seconds left or something won him the fight. To me, it was so smart. Why Kenny wasn't looking for a takedown is surprising. Like, that's something that if I was a fighter, I'd be trying to do in a close fight. Dominic Cruz looked great. Even though, and I thought Casey Kenny had really good performance, and I don't think this is pushing him too far down. Like, to me, it actually might increase his value because some people were kind of like, oh, Casey Kenny, should he be fighting Dominic Cruz? And he had moments. He had a lot of moments. So, really good performance. Both guys. To me, Dominic Cruz isn't washed up. To me, Casey Kenny's the guy that I've been big on. I'm still big on. What are your thoughts?
A lot of times when we see a result like this that is not what we expected, because you and I both picked Kenny ahead of this fight, and when we have a result like that, often we're asking, okay, is this more about Cruz being better than we thought he was or Kenny being worse? I'm still on board with Casey Kenny being a future top 10 fighter. In fact, if he'd beaten Cruz convincingly tonight, he might have been creeping up on the top 10 now.
Yeah.
I'm still sold on Casey Kenny. Just Dominic Cruz looked fantastic. You're right in that his movement, I'm not going to say his movement is like as good as it was in 2012 or something like that, but it's better than it looked in his last two fights. And you're right. He's one of the smartest fighters ever. it's hard to think of a time when Dominic Cruz lost a fight because he made a mistake or came in with a bad game plan. I mean, the closest I would say to that is the Garbrandt fight where he just wasn't able to adjust. Like,
Sure.
he knew within the first round that Garbrandt's hand speed was negating his game, and he just wasn't quite able to adjust. But that's not the same as just doing something dumb.
Yeah.
And he stays that way. Like, when was the last time you saw Dominic Cruz kick that much? And I think he came out and just intentionally said, I'm going to throw a lot of kicks the first round just because Kenny's not expecting that, and it's going to just kind of put him on his heels.
Yeah.
Brilliant fight from Dominic Cruz.
Yeah.
I was wrong when I said this is probably going to be like his last hurrah at anything even resembling a ranked fighter, because he beat Kenny, and I didn't think it needed to be a split decision. I thought he beat him in a pretty straightforward fight.
Yeah, I had it 29-28 for Cruz. I gave Cruz the first round. I gave him the third round. I gave Kenny the second round. I thought first and second round were pretty close, but yeah, no, I obviously the third round was definitely Dominic Cruz, but I felt pretty confident in the first round for Cruz. But really good performance. Let's matchmake Dominic Cruz, because the division is super jammed now. It didn't get even, it didn't get less jammed by having an automatic rematch at bantamweight. If anything, it became even more log jam. I would do Frankie Edgar. I feel
I like that.
Just two legends. They've never been in the same weight class. First time they're in the same weight class. Just whatever. Just have a fun weight between two legends. A legacy fight. That's what I would do. What would you do?
Either that, or I'd even say Jose Aldo. Like, Cruz showed enough life for me that, I mean, he just beat a borderline ranked fighter. Sure. If not dominated, beat him. Jose Aldo has been kind of the king of unearned, undeserved status and prestige in the bantamweight division. In the bantamweight division only. Just
sure.
If Cruz can steal some of that, all of a sudden he has the weirdest late bloomer contender story in a long time in the UFC.
Yeah, I'm okay with that matchup. To me, that fits right in the same category as Frankie Edgar. Like, same thing.
Yep.
They kind of like all three of them can't do, Edgar and Aldo. They've already fought each other twice. But yeah, if you want to put Cruz against either one of those, sign me up. Before that, I mean, we had another fantastic fight. Sonia Dong versus Kyla Phillips. Kyla Phillips won a unanimous decision. Just a dope fight.
It was great.
I think I gave all 3 rounds to... No, sorry. No, I didn't. I went 29-28. I gave Yadong the last round. But all 3 rounds were close. Like, all 3 rounds were competitive. I was so blown away with Phillips. His ability to get a takedown at the right timing, but also his use of athleticism to really generate power. Like, to me, that was the difference. Like, I still think Song Yadong might be the more tactical striker, but Phillips' power, his athleticism, he's fast, just a really good performance. And this guy's only 25 years old. Like, it was a great win over against a tough guy, and then Yadong's only 23.
Yep.
So I'm excited to see both of these guys. I don't think it was a bad performance for either guy. And to me, Phillips is definitely a fun guy to keep your eye on moving forward in a log-jammed good division.
It almost makes me wonder whether Song's best days are ahead of him actually at featherweight rather than bantamweight.
Okay.
Because he was visibly the bigger, stronger, bulkier guy, but despite that, Phillips was I felt landing with at least as much power just by being speedier, being more kinetic, just almost like running circles around him in some of those exchanges. And Song looked fine at his one-off fight at featherweight. So,
okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm okay with that too. Before that, Askar Ashraf gave Joseph Benavidez a beating. To me, this was like the sad moment. I did not do good at my picks. I picked this one wrong. I picked a lot of fights wrong. I didn't count my picks, but I think I had a losing night. Like, I think I had more losses than wins. Just not a good night. As far as picks go, this was sad to me because the era that I thought Joseph Benavidez could still beat Askar Askarov was the stand-up, and he had no match there. And the gap in the ground was much. I thought Benavidez could make a lot more scrambles than he could, and he was unable to. I don't want to say that he's completely done because I don't want to take anything away from Askarov. Like, I thought this was a really good performance. I thought it was, especially in the striking, like that's the area that I didn't think he could hang with Benavidez, and not only did he hang, he won that battle. But I also thought his wrestling was on a higher level than I've even credited because, he not only did he take Benavidez down, he kind of controlled it. Where do you stand? Do you think this says more about Benavidez as the fighter? And I want you to pick one because I know the answer is like a little bit of both. But was this more a good performance from Askarov, or was it more a bad performance from Joseph Benavidez?
If I have to pick just one, it's more of a referendum on Benavidez. I already thought Askarov was a top 10 level talent. This just told me that Benavidez no longer is. And it was sad to watch because, even the things he used to be great at. I mean, I think I said this on the preview. It was brilliant how he crafted a striking game that worked and was effective despite the fact that he gave up so much height and so much reach to every foe. And he can't do it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Benavidez, I don't think he's completely done, but I feel like he's right at the edge of the cliff and he's about to fall over because when you lose a step at flyweight, the guys are so fast. If you lose a step in the ground, lose a scrap, a little bit of athleticism or scramble on the ground, or just lose some hand speed, which was always been Benavidez's big thing, it's not going to be a right time. It's going to be a rough patch. I still think he could be competitive in the lower half of the top 15. Like, I still think he could do well there. But, like, it's ending and it's ending soon. And I kind of, to me, I would really like to see him retire. Go into coaching, go into something else, whatever. Because I don't want to see Joseph Benavidez struggling with the Tim Elliott, struggling with the Jordan Espinoza, those guys. And he's never going to win the title. I just think it's time. I think it's time to retire.
I'm not for forcing it, but I would certainly be happy if he did.
Yeah. Let's finish up the ESPN portion of the prelims. Another flyweight matchup. Kai Kara-France versus Ajero Bontorin.
I picked this one right, but I'm not proud of myself.
No, it was a fantastic. I mean, so this fight was great. It was a first round KO. This fight, if I could show someone a fight in this wouldn't be the fight I'd pick, but if on a fight on this card, if I could pick one to say why I love MMA, I would show this fight because you had a dominant grappling and fun, just one sided. It was fun grappling. It was fantastic, and then get back on the feet, one punch, knock him out cold. This is why I love MMA because you can't make up a 35-0 gap in football with one play. You can't make up a 10-point, 20-point deficit in basketball with one shot. But you can do that in MMA, and that's why I love this sport. This sport, everything you want in a fight was right there.
I love it, and I also think this should just be the automatic answer if anybody ever suggests again that the UFC get rid of the flyweight division. Because not only does this have everything you love about MMA, but this has a lot of answers about flyweight. Yes, the action is manic and fast and furious, and yes, more and more of these guys have one-shot knockout power these days. Yeah.
And shout out to Kara-France for getting the win for City Kickboxing because his other two teammates didn't. That team would have been on the Bears list if he didn't get that knockout. So he needed it too. His back was a little bit against the wall. Good win by Kara-France. So there's the ESPN prelims. Now let's get to the early ESPN Plus prelims. We still got 6 more fights to talk about. Tim Elliott versus Justin Espinoza. This is another flyweight. There's a lot of flyweights matchups. Tim Elliott won by unanimous decision. I think this is that. Remember we talked about wrestling, where Espinoza's credentials look a lot better than his actual wrestling. I'm doubling down. And I think this is even more. I'm not trying to hate on this guy, but he's got to show more in his wrestling department than he showed against Tim Elliott.
He made Tim Elliott look like 2003 Matt Hughes.
Yeah.
The kinds of takedowns that Elliott was getting. Just ankle picked him and ran him across the cage. It was literally like a Matt Hughes takedown against someone who didn't know how to wrestle. It was ridiculous. Elliott was slamming him all over the place. And I think Elliott is a very good and well-rounded fighter and better than his UFC record. But this has never been him. This is on Espinoza. He was terrible tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, so some things that I think Elliott did get was pressure. It's always been the pressure. Like, Espinoza had no answer to the pressure. Like, he was getting forced to back up. That's what Tim Elliott wants you to do when you're pressured. The way to beat Tim Elliott, you have to hold your ground. You can't back up. You can't hold your ground against the cage. And that's what happened. And the other thing is, he kept throwing these kicks, and Elliott would either, like, catch it and take, like, shoot, follow in the shot, or, like, just block it and then follow it and just bull rush you over. And I'm like, dude, when are you going to stop throwing those kicks? Not a good showing. There was a little bit of, like, I don't know what happened. They were like trash talking. Did you get any of it?
I did. I got the whole story if you want to hear it.
Okay.
Towards the end of the second round, Elliott was on top of Espinoza, like, just, I don't think he was him out, but he was on him and just grinding on him.
Yeah.
And
doing Tim Elliott stuff.
And starts yelling at him and calls him a woman beater and how do you like that? And a lot of it is getting beeped out, but a lot of it's getting through. And everyone that I knew, like both online and in the Sherdog Slack, was like, what's this? We've never heard of this. Turns out a woman made a very lengthy and detailed accusation against him that ended up getting
against Espinoza
against Espinoza that ended up getting reposted in the Sherdog forums, like, within the last day or so.
Really?
It was news to me.
I didn't know it either. Which is why you should always be checking the Sherdog forums.
Check the Sherdog forums. That's your first source for news that may or may not be news. I have nothing to say about that. Other than if there's something that needs to happen legally, let the legal process play out. It's not like if he did the things of which he's accused, I would want his punishment to be to lose to Tim Elliott.
No.
I would like him to go through the actual legal system.
And I apologize. My dog was just barking. I thought I muted my mic, and I held it too long. I think I unmuted it, and you heard me yelling at my dog to stop barking. I apologize. That's what happens when you go live. I apologize. I had a house full of people. I didn't really hear it. It got bleeped out, but whatever. Before that, and by no means am I trying to prosecute someone in Sherdog forums, so innocent to proven guilty kind of thing. Before that, what a crazy fight between Kennedy and Njoku, and I apologize if I'm saying his name wrong, versus Olberg.
It is your fight of the night, by the way.
Oh,
this was your fight of the night.
Which is funny because there was so many great fights. I think about Cruz Kenny, Yadong versus Phillips was a great fight. Jan Sterling had some really good moments, but I think they got the right one. I think this probably was the best fight. I didn't know where to start. So, first of all, I just want to give Njoku credit. Ooh. Pressure is a bitch. And if you've ever I recently was training someone in MMA and doing some stuff, and I was trying to explain to the person, like, the person had a very aggressive style to her, and I'm much bigger than this person, so I'm not hitting hard, I'm sparring lightly, but I was explaining to the person, like, when they were pressuring me and making me forced to back up, and I'm trying to be light. I'm not trying to hurt them, but I'm circling. I'm like, you realize how tired that makes me back up. It's an unnatural thing. And I think the commentary team kept saying that Olberg punched himself out. And I think there's some truth to that, but I think a lot of it has to do just the pressure of Njoku, that you keep, you take the power shots, you keep moving forward. And I don't think they were giving Njoku enough credit. Do you agree or disagree?
I agree. It was a weird performance from Olberg, and I'm not trying to excuse it at all. I mean, this may be his high watermark. He may just, maybe all downhill from here. But I expected a lot more from him, and I felt as though he was almost playing around, like, in the first round. Like, he normally has much better head movement than that, but like Nzechukwu like hit him squarely a bunch of times, and it almost seemed to be like he was goofing off. I don't get it at all. And again, I'm not trying to excuse a loss at all. There's every chance that he loses like this, even if he's fighting to his absolute best ability. But it was a weird performance from him.
Yeah, and besides the pressure of Nchukwu, I want to give him credit for his chin. I mean, Olberg landed some crazy big shots on him in the first round and was not, able to take him out. And I give Nchukwu a lot of credit to kind of like walk through that fire and make it into a war and then win it. And there was definitely a changing point, and it was like, this is gonna be bad. I actually said to one of the guys that was at my house at that time, I said, what I would say if I was Olberg's corner, like, you won the first round, and you're definitely the better striker, I would have said, move away from him and take the entire second round off. Give him the round. Give him the second round. So it's 1-1 heading in the third, and by that point, hopefully your energy bar came back up that you could have enough to win the third. But that was not the case. Nchukwu caught his chin. Really good performance by him. Before that, Jake Matthews went against Sean Brady. Sean Brady won by third round sub. This was, to me, was such a fantastic performance by Sean Brady. Incredible top control. Just a different level of BJJ. He is that black belt that just has a different feel than a lot of black belts do. And I love that he was, even though he was cruising, he had 2 rounds in the bag. He was up big in the third round. He's going to win 30-27 over, the biggest win of his career on a pay-per-view card against a good fighter in Jake Matthews. He kept looking for the finish and then found it. Like, to me, it was just a perfect, complete performance. What did you think of this fight?
Same, and kind of like I said about Islam Makhachev versus Drew Dober, and you just said about him, I did love that he kept the pressure on, did not take any time off at all. And this is against a guy who's not a chump. Jake Matthews was 10-4 in the UFC coming into this.
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, I thought Jake Matthews fought a good fight.
Well,
I mean, I favored Brady heavily going into this, so it's not like I didn't think Matthews was likely to win unless he just did something completely off the charts. But he fought the best Jake Matthews fight he could.
Yeah.
He did not give this to Brady. He had some decent success on the feet. He tried to stay off the ground as best he could. And, yeah, Brady just ran him right over.
Yeah. I agree with you. I thought Jake Matthews' stand-up early looked better than it's ever been, and that's always been kind of the knock. Like, Matthews was the wrestler, who needed to improve his stand-up, and I thought his stand-up looked really good. I thought he was winning the stand, especially in the first round. The third round, Brady had a lot of success on the feet, but that was after grinding on him for close to 10 minutes. I thought Matthew's still young. I thought it was actually like somehow his stock rose in a loss to me a little bit, like at least the talent wise. Like, I don't think he's gonna be a title challenger or anything like that. But as far as Brady, really good performance. I tweeted out about his team, Renzo Gracie Philly. It's one of these small school that just keeps popping up with good fighters. Fun team. For some reason I've just really liked that team. Daniel Gracie's the head coach there. Just looks really good. Speaking of looking really good, Amanda Lemos against Olivia Hanato Souza. This was the beatdown of the night. Like, if we had a category, what was the beatdown? Well, okay, maybe Amanda Nunes, but how about not as expected beatdown? How about that? Or maybe just the beatdown of the prelims. Amanda Lemos just ran right through Olivia Hanato Souza, and it was like the same thing we talked about Megan Anderson, in my opinion. Like, she would get hit with shots, and she had that look like, oh, I wasn't ready. Lemos, I'm gonna say a couple of things. I love that they got to Trevor Whitman and he was talking about the footwork of Amanda Lemos, because that was, I don't know if you remember, when I was doing my breakdown, I talked about her footwork, about springing, how she springs off her back foot and gets all her power. So, it was cool it's really cool to see someone as knowledgeable as Trevor Whitman kind of seeing things that I saw. Like, that kind of built my ego a little bit, to be honest. But this combination of speed, power, or accuracy of Lemos, like, to me, like, she looks like she could be a top 5 girl in that division. And that's a good division, too. Agree or disagree?
I agree. And I was one of the few who picked Souza going into this one. And I knew that I was, like, stepping out on a little bit of a limb. But, even if I was, just being just dead honest, I expected her to look a lot better than this. Like, Lemos looked fantastic. and Souza had no answer for the speed, for the power. Like as soon as she tasted the power, this thing was effectively over.
How did we make out in our picks that we disagreed with? Who won this?
Okay, so we're gonna get to Medish versus Cruz next.
Oh god! I just said beatdown. I just said beatdown of the night. What am I talking about? That wasn't the beatdown of the night.
I'll take the lead on that one.
Okay.
But you were right on that one. You were right on Souza versus Lemos. We both took Olberg. We took Elliott. I was right on Kai Kara France versus Fajero Bontarine, but like I say, I'm not proud of myself.
No, but it was like, you got it.
He was getting 10-8'd until he finished that thing.
That's all right. You got the win on that one. Is that it?
I think that's all the ones we. No, I picked Rockage and you picked Santos, didn't you?
So 2. Yep. So 2 and 2.
All right, I'll take it.
All right. So I started off early, looking great, and you came on strong at the end. So
yeah,
we'll call it a tie. You just mentioned it. Yoros Medish versus Alan Cruz battle of the Dana White Contender Series. I got to do this first. So I just had that Lemos was the beatdown. I actually just listen. This was it's 3:10 a.m. On the East Coast. This fight was happening about 5:45 ish, give or take. That was 10 hours ago, so I kind of forgot about it. This Medish won by first round murder, with a little of assistance from referee Mark Smith, who. Shout out to Daniel Cormier. I thought I had one of the best lines of the night when he said, Mark Smith came to watch a fight. This is the one he's watching. He forgot he was refereeing. Something like that. Like he forgot he was refereeing. He was just watching. Medish landed about 50 punches more than it had to.
Well, it was stopped at 1 minute 40, so it was 100 seconds long. Okay. I think it literally went twice as long as it needed to. I think this fight went twice as long as it had to.
You might be right.
What was he waiting for? He was just chasing them all over as Medish just beat the shit out of Cruz for, a minute.
So, it seems like every week we talk about a referee. And I actually think, generally speaking, Mark Smith is actually one of the better referees. This was not the one. This is a terrible one. To his credit, Cruz was trying to move, but he was moving into punches. Like, he wasn't, like, just because they're moving, a fish stuck on the dock is flopping around too. You know what I mean?
He didn't know where he was. Obviously, Big John McCarthy is the one who coined the phrase in the first place, intelligently defending yourself. Yeah, he didn't know where he was. He was moving right into worse danger. Like, you just need to pull the plug on that fight.
Yeah, and even when he was moving, he was keeping his forehead like pretty much on the ground, trying to protect himself. Like, he wasn't trying to find a way to get out or get offense. He was just trying to find a way to not get punched directly in the face anymore. Like, it didn't seem like he was trying to win a fight anymore. He was more just, I don't want to get punched that clean anymore. Can you please stop it? That thing, I forgot to mention this during the Jamaine Sterling controversy. I don't like how Mark Smith, to me, I think he took way too long to get the doctor in there, especially when the guys seems like they're concussed. But I also felt like the moments between the doctor and Mark Smith, and there was like big moments of like pause. We didn't know really what was going on. I felt like neither guy wanted to make the call. Like, neither guy wanted to make the call. They knew it was a disqualification coming. They knew a belt was changing hands. I don't think either guy wanted to be the bad guy to call it. Which is an even bigger problem of both of their. No, that might not be the case. They were talking back and forth. Who knows? But to me, that's what it seemed like.
I'm with that. Like, I don't think either one wanted, because I mean, a lot of things are moving fast there, and they ended up with a result that had never happened at the UFC level before, and neither one wanted to be the first that this ended up being the wrong call. So I understand it. It sucks. I got to say something else about the Medic versus Cruz fight.
Okay.
After the preview, I understand that somebody from Anchorage, BJJ, reached out. I don't know whether it was Ryder Spadafore or it was Matt Stout, but someone on their coaching staff reached out and let us know that we don't know anything about MMA and this would be me, since I'm the one who picks Cruz to win this fight. So, mea culpa. You are absolutely right. Yeah. I know nothing about MMA, at least for the minute and 40 seconds that this fight took. I will not be so quick to doubt your mans in the future.
Yeah.
What I will say is, if you told me, if you came back from a time machine from Sunday morning and said, okay, Medic won this fight, I would have said, okay, you know what? He just overwhelmed him with power and just beat the brakes off him in the first round.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this was a fantastic performance from Medic. My questions still remain. I picked Cruz again. Took a little bit of a flyer just because I don't know how Medic is going to look against UFC level lightweights in 3-round fights. I don't know what his gas tank looks like. I don't know what his defensive wrestling and grappling are going to look like. So I still have the same questions about Medic going forward, but about this fight, about this opponent, I was absolutely dead wrong, and I greatly appreciate the folks from Anchorage BJJ that took the time to listen to the preview at all.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I like that he messaged me, and I love that. You know what he said? This is a gross over. I think it's like grossly mismatch. He's gonna run through him, and you know what? He talked big, and your boy backed him up. So congratulations to the whole team. Someone tweeted out that between his Contender Series fight and this fight, the total strikes, or maybe it was significant strikes, was 87-2. I didn't fact check that, but if that's, I'm sure it was pretty close. It was both one-sided fights. So yeah, Medic is on a nice tear. Good way to start his UFC career. And before that, speaking of starting UFC career, Kevin Jones won by second round TKO of Mario Batista with a beautiful shot. He is not officially. He's officially only 1-0 UFC. But come on, stop with these I'm not even a weed smoker, but like stop with these stupid weed like rulings. He's got 2 knockouts in an underdog role. I saw someone tweet out about his power at bantamweight could make it a problem for a lot of guys. Yeah, man, Kevin Jones, like, we got to stop putting some respect on his name. This twice he's been an underdog, and twice I thought he lost the first round, and twice he came back big in the second round. So
he's going to be the Paul Craig of punching. He's losing until he wins.
Yeah, and this setup, just like, this was the beginning of a great night, and to me, like, a incredible prelims, especially the early prelims. So there you guys have it. We have actually covered all 15 fights. We went through the prelims faster than we can. I'm looking at the timer, about a minute. I almost said a minute. An hour and 37 minutes in. I didn't think that would be possible for us to call that. But let's get to the fun stuff, as I'm going to try my best to keep this. I think we'll make it under 2 hours. We got the Bulls and the Bears. We have the cut list, and we have our overall grade. Ben, we didn't mention, what was the bonuses? You have the bonuses in front of us?
I do have the bonuses. Fight of the night, like I said, Enzuchuku versus Olberg. Your performances of the night, Medic and Kai Kara-France.
Yeah. And
I love that the bonuses went to undercard fighters.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure Israel Adesanya or Jan Blachowicz or Amanda Nunes, could find something to do with an extra $50K, but that is life-changing money.
That's right.
For your Kai Kara-France's and Uros Medic's. So.
Yeah, the only one that I would have beef with giving it to, I wouldn't have gave it to Kai Kara-France. Well, yes, his knockout was absolutely incredible. To me, like, Medic was a pull at a post. I mean, I was only like, what did you say, 100 seconds?
The pillar and post were really close together, but yes.
Yeah, like it was 100 seconds. To me, Lemos had a better performance. Like, she just smoked Olivia Hanato Souza.
Lemos, Sean Brady. I would have been fine with Sean Brady picking up.
Yeah, it's tough because it went so late. Like, they got to give it to a first round stoppage. But to me, like, I'm 100% on board with. I like when the prelim fighters get it. I also still want the person who most deserves it to get it, regardless of where they are on the card. To me, still Amanda Nunes' performance was, and like, she was obviously the huge favorite. But to me, like, I don't know, man. Like, Lemos deserves some kind of cash. But whatever. That's I don't know. Good for Kai Kara-France. Hopefully he can use it well. Maybe he needed it more. Let's do the cut list first. Okay. So the way we do the cut list, guys, is they have to be in both mine and Ben's list. We don't share a list. We throw out who we think should be cut from the UFC. We both agree on the person. They make the Schillen and Duffy show cut list, which means they should be out of the UFC. Someone should take their place. I have 2. Do you have any?
I have 1. So
okay,
I go first?
Someone is making the cut, who is? Oh, maybe it's two but who is the person that you think? No, sorry, I said that wrong. I said one person could be cut, but maybe none of my guys get cut because maybe you have someone completely different than what I have. Who is the person you would cut?
I would cut Jordan Espinoza.
Okay.
He's now 2-4 in the UFC. The two people he's beaten are two of the worst flyweights the UFC has ever had. I mean, he's 2-4 in the UFC, and the two guys he's beaten are also like 2-4 in the UFC.
Sure. So I had a hard time with Jordan Espinoza because one reason he's a flyweight. Simply put, he's a flyweight. They need bodies. That said, he's lost 4 out of his last 5 fights, 2 in a row. So it's official. Jordan Espinoza has been added to the Shillen and Duffy cut list. We probably should actually keep track of that.
Yeah.
We just say it. We don't really keep track. Maybe we should start writing it down. The other one I had was Alan Cruz. He's 0-2 in the UFC. He looks completely overwhelmed. But you did not put him on the list, so Alan Cruz gets a third crack in the UFC, according to Mr. Benjamin Duffy.
It's because I felt guilty because I must have cursed him by picking him to win. So it shouldn't be my fault that he gets cut.
Yeah. Let's move on to the Bulls and the Bears. The Bulls and Bears is a stock market reference. This is when guys' stock are going up. They are a bull stock or a bull market. That's what they say in the stock market. Move over to Bears. Bears is when it's going down. You don't want to be owning a bear stock. That means you just lost a bunch of money. Let's keep it negative for the moment, and we'll do Bears.
Sure.
Do you want to go first or you want to go second?
I'll go second. You can go first.
All right. My 3 Bears are number 3, the women's 145-pound division. The reason why I say that is simply put, Danielle Wolf might be the I think it's Norma Dumont, Danielle Wolf, and somebody else I'm forgetting that has not faced Amanda Nunes yet. But I don't think anybody currently on the roster has a win in the UFC that Amanda Nunes hasn't defeated. There were talks about on the pre-shows and the pre-media days about what could happen to the division. Dan White says that as long as Amanda Nunes want to continue fighting that, they'll continue making matchups. But it's slim pickings. Megan Anderson had it seemed like forever we've been waiting for Megan Anderson to get a title shot. Going back to when she was supposed to fight Chris Cyborg for the title. Just overall, there's no new meat. There's nobody too intriguing in that division other than Amanda Nunes. So to me, the women's 145-pound division, which already stock was extremely low, fell even lower. My number 2 is Israel Adesanya. I don't think he had performance. I actually thought he won. So, and I know I'm probably in the minority, but I mean, there was a lot of people out there. But it's just that he's like the star. He was the guy that they wanted to win. He said afterwards, like, you got to take a chance to really be successful in life, kind of something like that. And I agree with him. So, but he also tried getting the second title and lost, and it was his first loss in his career. So I think his stock lost a little bit. I'm assuming he'll probably fall in the Sherdog pound-for-pound rankings a little bit. So, but my number 1 is Thiago Santos. Thiago Santos now lost 3 fights in a row. This is a guy that won a scorecard on against John Jones, the only guy still in history to win a judge's scorecard against John Jones. He looked very flat in his fight against Glover Teixeira. I thought he looked flat again today. I thought he was really, as you mentioned, getting up there in age, limiting his chances of winning. Just to me, Thiago Santos' stock is really plummeted. Who are your Bears, man?
I agree to at least some extent with all 3 of yours, but just to throw in some variety here, number 3, I'm going to say Joseph Benavidez. I hate to say it, but
yeah,
this might have been this will be the last time that the odds were this close for him against an even remotely near the top 10 fighter. This was a guy that on paper was a decent style matchup for him, and he looked miserable. Like, that was his last hurrah.
Yeah, good pick.
As a contender of any kind.
That's a real good pick.
Number 2, Carlos Olberg. You don't get a second chance to make a first impression. He will get more shots in the UFC. He's clearly homies with Adesanya. Like, he had speaking parts on Adesanya's sizzle reel. It's probably part of the reason he was on this card for the synergy. He has some of that same star potential, but it helps if you keep winning fights like Adesanya did. Olberg got clocked in his UFC debut. Like I say, he'll get more chances to win. He won't get another chance to make just that star debut. Number one. Meh. Women's featherweight. Dude, you keep saying Norma Dumont. Norma Dumont tried to drop to 135, blew weight badly, and so she's moving back up, and she's taking on Bia Malecki, who washed out of the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah.
Like one
and
of
she
those
should be a
two
145 pounder.
Yeah, no, they're back at 145. Like Malecki's.
Okay, Malecki's okay.
She's huge.
Okay,
but one of them or a 2-0 Danielle Wolf is going to get a title shot in the UFC.
Yeah.
And probably the next one in that division.
Who was the other girl I was forgetting about that recently fought at women's featherweight?
Zara Farron dos Santos.
Zara Farron, yeah.
The one that Megan Anderson triangled.
Yeah. Oh, God. You know what? As crazy as it sounds, and she's not even that good at bantamweight, but like Macy Chasson, who was, one time the, featherweight champion from the Ultimate Fighter, Ultimate Fighter champion, not division champion, like she'd probably be the number 2 girl right now. Like she
if she had stayed at featherweight out of tough, she would have had 3 title shots by now.
That's right.
I don't know why she keeps killing herself to drop to 135. 'Cause she is big.
Yeah,
she's like 5'10", 5'11". She's got a big frame.
You know what? I would say I don't understand why she's dropping down. I would agree. Like, I don't understand, but I would understand if Amanda Nunes didn't fight at 135. Like that would make sense to me. But no, she's the champion of that division too. So it's not like it's like if you're gonna get beat up by Amanda Nunes, or you're not gonna be the champion, might as well get to the title shot. I don't know. Let's go over to the Bulls. The Bulls this is when guys or girls or whoever had a really good night. Ben, I'll let you go first this time.
This is a crowded night for him, but my number 3 will be Tim Elliott. Yeah, Jordan Espinoza's no great shakes. He, he was on our cut list, but Tim Elliott he's better than his UFC record looks. He is a well-rounded fighter. He's very aggressive. He's a pressure fighter, and if you have any weaknesses, he's going to go straight for them. Like I say, I don't know when he became D1 like Elliott, but
yeah,
I mean, he had one of the better wrestling performances of the night.
Absolutely.
On a night that Islam Makhachev was on the card.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah.
Number 2, Dominic Cruz. I wrote this guy off. I was wrong. The last thing I expected myself to be saying, aside from and new Megan Anderson, the thing that I expected myself least to be saying Sunday morning is, hey, Dominic Cruz looks like a top 10 bantamweight, and he does.
Yeah.
So congratulations, Dominic Cruz. Wow, what a performance. And number 1, who can it be but the legendary Polish power of Jan Blachowicz? It wasn't a perfect performance. No. It took 2 guys to make this victory for him, but there's nothing cheap about it. He went out there and he beat Israel Adesanya. And one of these times we're going to stop writing the guy off, but until then he is at the top of the Bulls list.
Yeah, I'm interested who's going to be the favorite. I think he's actually going to be the favorite against Glover Teixeira because of the age, and I don't know. The line will be close though. I'll get to my 3 Bulls. These are the ones who had the really good night. My number 3, Amanda Lemos. She was a favorite, but she beat former Invicta champion, absolutely smashed her. She, as we both mentioned, she looks like a future top 5 fighter. It's a girl that in her next fight will have a lot of buzz. She'll probably be a favorite in her next fight too. My number 2, I'm staying in the prelims again. Sean Brady. This guy's 14-0. He's 4-0 in the UFC. He's got back-to-back stoppage wins, and they're talking about giving him a ranked fighter next, which he probably deserves. He could be in the top 15 rankings after his next win. Really good for Sean Brady. But my number 1 is the same as your number 1, Jan Blachowicz, simply for the fact, a couple things. One, he was kind of in the shadow of John Jones when he won the title. It's always when someone vacates the title, it takes a little while to, vindicate you as a champion. He kind of did that tonight. Sure, Adesanya was much smaller than that, but he defended against a guy, and suddenly everyone's talking about the size difference. Well, Adesanya was a favorite, and he was pretty significant favorite. But also, 20 people before him had a shot at beating Adesanya, and they couldn't figure out, and he did. So, John Ho was good for him. He has completely turned out his career around, and he's just seems like a good dude. So I'm glad that he able to turn this around. Newly made father. So good for him. All right, last one, man. What do you grade all 15 fights, 3 title fights? What is your overall grade of the card?
Well, first a quick shout out to Jay Petry, who said that he is picking Jan Blachowicz in his next fight, no matter who he fights.
That's it, John Jones.
To agree. I'm going to give this card
Superman.
an A. The only thing that keeps it from being an A+ is that one of the title fights ended weirdly, and the other didn't quite deliver what we hoped.
Yeah, so as far as a pay-per-view, if you just took just the pay-per-view, I would have gave it like B-, C+. Like, it wasn't that good, but the prelims were crazy good, like A+. So just balance it all out. I'm going to go with like a B+, because I don't even hate that the title fight ended in disqualification, because I like something to talk about, something I will remember. You know what I mean? Like, I'll remember this 10 years from now, 20 years from now. There'll be someone else would be disqualified, and I'll be like, oh no, remember when Jamaine Sterling won the title? But like the main event was kind of just an okay main event. So that, to me, the main event, like, I always kind of view it like the heavier, the higher up the card, you carry a little bit more weight. So that pulls it down to like a B+. So there you guys have it. We did all 15 fights, including 3 title fights, and still made it under 2 hours in what we believe is the most comprehensive recap there is. Ben, you ready to do another 15 fight card in like 3 days, breaking it down?
Yes. And before we go, I have to say that Amanda Nunes is the GOAT.
There you guys have it. All the people listening live in the Sherdog YouTube, thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week.